Hello, John again, just in from racing. How did it go? Well, see for yourself.
Yeah, I think he's got his first week.
Well, back to the story. Me and Jane had known each other for a short while now, and we were getting on very well. But we needed reliable transport. In the early months, and well, the first year or so maybe, there were plentiful vehicles with fuel in them. However, these were fast running out. Plus the fact we needed something safe, reliable and safe, because there were still gangs of mainly young men, sometimes women, females, young females. They were up to no good, basically. There were these gangs roaming the land, and often drunk, because there was obviously plenty of beer and spirits to be had at this point, and they were just, well, doing as they liked. And they all had guns, and they were shooting at you on sight, and sometimes shooting each other and just leaving them to injured and die or dead, just leaving them on the ground, you know. It was not a nice time, and it was a very, very dangerous time. Anyway, so what we did, me and Jane spent the next few months, well, probably the first year, finding houses, remote houses, with enough food, and hopefully water. We carried water with us, but water was a constant problem. But the first thing we needed was reliable transport. Now, both coming from an agriculture background, we realised one of the most reliable transport is a trap-laying vehicle, but we needed an old one, nothing with modern electronics. In fact, using a modern four-wheel drive, we had a very, very lucky escape. Luck had been with us up to this point, but God, we were lucky this time, because we came across one of these gangs, and luckily they were far enough away and they started shooting at us. So we fled the vehicle, and across a small field was a wood. We entered the wood. Now remember, these were drunken young men that were pretty idle, to be honest. They didn't chase you that far. So we entered the wood, and then we heard that they were coming after us. So we went out the other side of this fairly small wood, and we walked for a long way. In fact, we were looking and looking, and we began to wonder if luck had gone against us, because we were both getting very tired. However, we came across a road, and we found another vehicle. At this point, I must say, it was fairly dry, and so we often took two vehicles just in case one broke down. And it could be, you know, most cars could travel at this, so we took two vehicles until we found a suitable one, and then when we found another suitable one, we took that one, so in case we had a problem. So that's how we travelled around in the first, as I say, few months or so. Anyway, we both realised what was required. It was an old pre-electronics track laying vehicle that we could make bulletproof against normal handguns. You wouldn't make them bulletproof against a cannon, obviously, but against normal handguns shouldn't be too much of a problem. So we went in search of a farm, and we found an old crawler with a cab, and I thought, well, that'd be ideal. Well, we both thought that'd be ideal. Anyway, we started it up, managed to start it very easy. All you have to do, you don't need power, you know, on old vehicles. You just need a battery to start them. And off you go. Anyway, this is where luck turned against us. This blooming crawler had been left standing for a long while, with the same fuel in the tank. Now, diesel fuel can get something called a diesel bug, which sort of turned it to jelly. It's like it gums everything up, and it's a major job to clear. Well, unfortunately for us, that's what this flipping crawler had in the tank. So it ground to a halt, and we'd picked up one or two tools, so managed to get the fuel pipe off the tank, you know, and the pump, but no, it wasn't. We couldn't fix it there and then. It was quite a major job, so we had to abandon it. And this was, as I say, it was crushing. Anyway, undaunted, well, daunted a bit to be honest, we carried on foot, and we had to travel quite a mile or so to get to a road where we found a car that ran, and we took that. Then we found another 4x4 which should do us, but as soon as we came across another one, we took that as well, so we weren't going to be caught out again. So we carried on, and being both from farming communities, we knew of a farming museum, but it was about 7 miles away, which doesn't sound far if you've got a modern road and a modern car. But when you're crawling along in a mud field, which luckily it wasn't, it hadn't been wet, so ordinary cars would travel on fields, we managed to make it to this museum. And we found that it was still secure, so that's another major bit of luck. So, bringing some tools with us from the farm, you know, the tools we need to cut locks, etc., just in case, and we did need it, steel saw and one or two other hammers, chisels, all that sort of thing. We got into the building, and there was an international drop, which is a track laying vehicle with a 4-into-1 bucket on it, a big strong old vehicle, pre-electronics, with a cab on, and a big steel bucket. They're quite strong vehicles, and this we could convert into something that should make us fairly safe transport, because that's what the first requirement was. So in this museum, obviously, there was fuel in tractors, and it was good fuel. So we raided some tanks and found some cans. I think we found one. We found one jerry can, which holds what, 25 litres, 5 gallons, and several plastic gallon tins. It should be enough to last us quite a while anyway. So loaded up with fuel with a decent, if yet unsafe, vehicle. We got this going, cut the door off and drove it out and carried on away. Sedately, not very fast. Not very fast. Anyway, we didn't meet any more intruders, thankfully. And we carried on until we found a remote house, again, with a good workshop. A remote, not a farmhouse this time. It was a remote house, but it had also had a workshop, a fully equipped workshop, and it also had a generator, which was a blessing, a godsend. So we set to work to make this international drop as safe as we could under the circumstances. Now, from our banger racing experience, we knew the most vulnerable part of an engine is its coolant system, the water, the radiator. So we removed the radiator and found a large tank, and we fitted a water tank. Now, run steadily. It may boil the water, but an engine won't come to any harm as long as it doesn't run dry. That's the only thing you've got to do. And if it did actually overheat, which it did on one occasion, we just had to wait quite a long while for it to cool off, because the one thing that can ruin an engine is to overheat them, i.e. run them without water. It will totally destroy them. So we had reliable transport. So we managed to, as I say, we found this farm with a good workshop, and we didn't really have enough plate. We wanted something like in old money 3/16 steel plate, which should be strong enough to stop a normal handgun bullet. And we did find some, but they were too thin. They had some sheets because it had been a fab shop, and but they were too thin. So what we actually did was double them up, and so we had to do twice the work. So what we did, removed the radiator and fitted the water tank, and got these steel sheets, and we drilled lots of small holes in them. As I say, this workshop, it had a generator which worked, and we had fuel. There was cars all over the place. You didn't have to go far for fuel at this point. And you know, we were undisturbed. We really were undisturbed, even with the noise of the generator. So we worked fairly hard for 2 or 3 days, to be honest. There was plenty of food in the house, and again we were lucky not to be stumbled across, but these gangs roaming the land were quickly getting fewer and fewer, so the chance of being discovered by one became less and less every day, which was obviously a blessing. So we worked on this international drop, and we fitted steel sheets with holes in on the front and on the sides of the engine. We welded them on the sides of the engine. We also made a box and welded it around the fuel tank, and then we cut sheets the shape of windows and drilled small holes in them and removed the windows and welded these sheets in place so we could see out, and were fairly safe from being shot at, which did in fact happen a few times, although nothing very serious. So at last we had reliable transport, unless we were very, very unlucky. Thankfully we weren't. So with reliable transport, we continued to look for a more secure place to live. And travelling around, remember what you need, the necessities: clear running water, and fairly remote, without houses, and a house you can make reasonably secure. And after that comes the difficult job of keeping intruders out. But that's to come. That's to come. So initially we found this remote house, and we had transport. Obviously food wouldn't last forever, but we could stock up. It was, you know, you didn't have to be choosy. It was mainly tin food, because of course there wasn't any fresh food. There was still fresh food growing in the fields. So as long as you had some cooking facility, you know, you could get something to eat. Because there was still, well, plenty actually of fresh food and veg in the fields. And obviously this has only got to be a short-term thing. Something else long-term would have to be dealt with later. So that's how we survived for the first few months and the first year or so. And let's hope that it continues, because we worked hard. Now there's one other thing: our health. Thankfully we were both healthy, but if one of us became sick, there was no help. So what was required was knowledge. Well, that was quite easy to solve, because each town, of course, in villages, have a doctor's surgery. And in that doctor's surgery is a laptop. Now, remember, a laptop can be used from a vehicle. You can power it from a vehicle. So that's how we got the information. We picked up 2, maybe 3. And these had all the notes that you needed for normal ailments. If we got something serious, well, we got something serious. That could not be helped. So we had some knowledge. That's the main thing. And we also required knowledge of growing and things, and we did just the same. So we ended up with, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 laptops. But that was over the next year or so. You know, that wasn't immediate. And other than, you know, a bit of a cold once or twice, we luckily, thankfully, stayed healthy. So that's how we survived for the first few months and year or so. So the next instalment, I will tell you how we made the property. We found the property and made it secure, or as secure as we could do under the circumstances. Hope you're enjoying it. In a bit.